Coach Sully here. On today's MatChat, we're going to be talking about the discipline of staying centered. Now, life can pull you in all kinds of directions. It's always trying to get you off balance, get you out of center. And, we all have certain directions that we want to go, but it seems like there's forces all around us that are trying to pull us off the path that we've set ourselves on. And that's why I love martial arts, because it allows you to train and function in chaos. You have a lot of things going on. Your opponent is doing things, some of which you should be concerned of, some of which you shouldn't be concerned of, all the while you're trying to stick with your game plan and get to the end. So martial arts is a great tool to practice staying centered in a life that's full of distractions and full of chaos. So speaking of martial arts, in kickboxing, boxing, we have what's called feints, where our opponent, or us for that matter, we pretend like we're going to do one thing to solicit a reaction from our opponent. And we have to look at some of these distractions like they are feints. Every day we're confronted with something that on the surface, it looks like it warrants our immediate attention, but a lot of times it doesn't. Every day we're confronted with situations where we feel compelled to react, to do something about it. And a lot of times that initial reaction is a mistake. As a matter of fact, I was just listening to something yesterday, and the person speaking was making an awesome point. He said, anytime you react, it's going to be the wrong move. Any reaction, anytime you're reacting, it's going to lead to mistakes. So understanding that when things come up, when someone does something, when an issue arises, most of the time, 99% of the time, it is not necessary for us to respond immediately. So we can pause and pump the brakes and give ourselves enough time to make sure that we are doing the most appropriate thing to address that situation. And like I said, life throws all kinds of things at you, and it reminds me of that feint. And it's trying to solicit a response, solicit a mistake. And we have to make sure that we don't fall for the feints that life throws at us. And we stay centered, we stay focused, and we stay on the path of where we want to go. Now, when we're talking about environments, we have to understand how powerful environments are, how much of an influence they have over us, how much they determine how we behave, how much they determine what our destiny is, how successful we are. You can take two people and same upbringing, same opportunities, put them in different environments, and you're going to get different results. You're going to get different outcomes. So we have to make sure that we are putting ourselves in environments that are encouraging our growth, and environments that are encouraging our success, and environments that aren't weighing us down and slowing us down, because environment is so important. The people that we hang around, you guys have heard this, the saying before, if you hang out with 5 successful people, you're going to be the 6th one. If you hang out with four losers, you're going to be the fifth one. Nothing is truer. The people that you hang out with, the environments that you frequent are going to play a huge part. And yes, we have power to influence our environments. There are some environments we can go into an environment and be the change that shifts the environment. But we have to understand exactly where our power is when we attempt to do something like that. Because we always have to be asking ourselves, is this environment, when we're in those type of environments, is this environment influencing me or am I influencing it? Because if if I'm not in an environment that is going to move me in the right direction, I need to be moving it in the right direction. And a lot of environments are greater than our influence. Oops. Sometimes the environment is too strong for us to influence the environment. Sometimes the environment might consume us. So we have to be careful about that. We have to be able to protect our environment, dictate our environment, and make sure that it is working in our advantage as opposed to working against us. Now, what that often will look like is taking care of problems early, making sure that things don't contaminate our environment. When we see something that might mess things up, we have to take care of it early. A lot of times we'll ignore something and it always turns into something bigger. So we have to make sure that when we spot something that needs addressing, when something needs to be done, we don't put it off because it always grows. A lot of times, whether it's a conversation that needs to be had, whether it's a responsibility that we have, when we put it off, when we delay, it only sits there and grows. And a lot of times what goes on in our head, what we think will happen, what we hope will happen is that whatever the problem is, whatever the situation, will just kind of fizzle out. But it never does. And what we do is, by trying to avoid the issue, we prolong the issue. Because put it like this, you have something that's it's like a cloud over your head, something that you need to do, a conversation that you need to have. Until you have that conversation, you're going to be dealing with the negative effects of that conversation on your own psyche, on your own mental, every day until you deal with it. So you need to have a talk with somebody. Every time you see that person, it's going to be an awkward situation. So what you end up doing is dealing with the exact thing that you are trying to avoid over and over and over and over again until you actually have to deal with it, or until it's so big that you can't ignore it anymore. So you've dealt with it mentally every day. And while you've been putting it off, it's grown. Now, when you absolutely have to deal with it, it's more difficult to deal with. So we have to address problems early. We have to address issues early. And when we do that, we actually are taking the path of least resistance and we're taking the easy way out, even though at the time it might look like the more difficult way to go about it. Now, when we are looking to produce results in our lives, we have to make sure that we don't focus on that end result. We don't chase the outcome. And I love using martial arts as an example. When people come in all the time, what I would like to do is I would like to have people work on their balance and their footwork before they even throw one punch. But unfortunately, you can't do that. Somebody walks in the door and like, hey, I came here to learn how to throw a punch. And I haven't thrown one punch yet. So we can't do that. But the proper order of things is to build a foundation in order to create the result. We look on TV, we look at a boxing match, we look at a kickboxing match, we look at MMA, and we see that beautiful knockout punch. Boom. Not understanding that in order for that knockout punch to be possible, that puncher has to have their feet under them. They have to have their balance. They have to have structure. They have to follow the right technique. And I always tell my students, obviously, I'm not able to hold them off from throwing punches when they first walk through the door. But after they've thrown a few punches, I always tell them, hey, all right, guys, at this point, you guys have thrown thousands of punches. Now it's time to focus on the things that actually make those punches possible. That's keeping your feet under you. That's drawing the energy from the ground, keeping your feet planted in the ground when you're throwing these punches. Everything has to come from a solid foundation. Everything has to come from a structure that can hold it. If my feet are not stable in the ground, when I throw a punch, that energy is going to come back to me and I'm actually going to fall down. So we have to make sure that we have a solid foundation under us. Now, when we're in life, when we're moving around, when we're interacting, when we're speaking to people, in people's presence, people are in our presence, it's really a transfer of energy. And like we were talking about before, we were talking about the environment. The environment really is the sort of energy that's being transferred back and forth in that environment. And we, just like a person can transfer energy to us, we're also transferring energy back to them. It's an energy exchange. And we have to assess what sort of exchanges are happening. And the people that we see every day, the people that are in our lives, what sort of energy am I absorbing from them? And what sort of energy am I passing along to them? What are they giving me and what am I giving them? What am I receiving from them and what are they receiving from me? We have to look at things that way because then we can take inventory on whether our exchange is beneficial for us and beneficial for them. If someone comes in, if you're hanging around somebody that is draining you, you have to be able to say, hey, this person is draining me. And maybe you might have the energy that day to be drained because, again, it's an energy exchange. So sometimes your friend or your loved one will drain your energy, but they're also going to give some of that energy back to you, or they might even allow you to drain their energy. But it's all an exchange, and we have to be aware of that. Just like that exchange, going back to the environment, that exchange between the people that occupy the environment, it dictates the environment. So you know, something that's really important to me here at my gym, the culture, the way people are talking, interacting with each other. I have to make sure that I'm aware of the culture, aware of the energy, aware of the excitement. I have to be paying attention if someone seems off, if someone seems like they're not feeling it that day, because all of that energy is contagious. I have to be mindful of who I allow to come in and train, because if they're coming in and they are disrupting the energy of the place, it's contagious. It's contagious. A lot of people come in to plug into the energy. For a lot of people, the environment is their source of energy. So we have to make sure that our environment, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, that first of all, we're contributing to that environment so that environment can be energetic. And we have to make sure that we protect that environment so that that energy that we come to the environment to draw is maintained. It stays there. So it's there for us and it's there for the others that want to take advantage of it. But anyway, it's all about staying centered. And if I were to sum it up, because life is a bunch of pushing and pulling, things are tugging at you, things are pushing you down, and sometimes you do well, sometimes you fall short. But if I were to sum it up to one key for success and navigating the chaos that's life, I would say that awareness, paying attention, trying to make sense of it, being calculated, awareness is going to be the thing that'll help you successfully navigate through it. All right, guys, gotta run. Coach Sully, Reps and Sweat, Frederick, Maryland. This was MatChat.